Major oil marketers resolve to continue supply of petrol to retail outlets across the country.
Lagos is getting better by the hour. Because of the distance between Lagos and Abuja, it will take some time before Abuja gets to the normal position.
House of Representatives commences investigation into alleged 21 billion naira fraud by rice importers.
Shall attract 10% duty rate with a levy of 20%.
People's Democratic Party, the PDP, clears its National Working Committee of allegation of embezzlement of campaign funds.
And in our series on agenda setting for the incoming administration, we focus today on efforts at reviving the manufacturing subsector.
All right, the manufacturing subsector is one that every nation relies upon in the quest for industrial development. And indeed, economic analysts believe that a nation that gets its industrial policy right would have addressed a number of developmental issues.
Well, one of such issues, of course, is that the manufacturing subsector has great potentials for addressing a country's unemployment challenges and with a knock-on effect on the reduction of poverty also in the country.
Okay, the manufacturing subsector contributes to the long-term economic growth in Nigeria. And Kingsley, of course, from latest statistics we have available to us, the Nigerian manufacturing sector currently constitutes about 10% of the nation's GDP.
The National Bureau of Statistics says that over the past few years, the performance of the manufacturing subsector has been strengthened, resulting in a growth rate of about 8.41% in 2013.
Okay, now that subsector again accounts for about 12% of employment in the formal sector and was a manufacturing hub for West Africa for decades. Now, this where when pharmaceutical products and other consumer manufactured goods fueled Nigerian exports to other countries in West Africa. But that certainly is not the case now, as products from other continents have flooded our local markets.
Yes, Claire, you're right. Of course, you will recall that when we dealt with the issue of reviving the agricultural subsector, in particular, we're dealing with cotton and value addition to cotton. One of our guests on the program last year, they demonstrate the inferior quality of imported cotton wool compared to that produced in Nigeria. Now, what I'm saying, in essence, is that most, a good number of the products and goods that are imported into the country may very well be substandard.
Indeed, Kingsley. And the sad story today is that many of the manufacturing countries in Nigeria are either closed or are producing at very minimum capacity. Now, this is in spite of the rebasing of the country's gross domestic products. Can Nigeria regain its status as the central nervous system for manufacturing and distribution in West Africa? As Kingsley will say, it's a million naira question, and we will be seeking answers to a few minutes from now. That this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, broadcasting live from here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Claire, but I'm happy you didn't dollarize the question. It's preferable for us and legal for us to use our legal tender, namely the naira. But the point to underscore before I sign on for today's program, Claire, is that there have been a number of policy initiatives. We have the automotive policy, for instance, which is yielding tremendous benefits in that particular sector. And then you have other areas that we'll be touching on in the course of the conversation. Manufacturers, of course, course, have their own catalog of issues to deal with. So what we're examining this morning will be the interface between the policy enunciation, policy implementation, as well as the uptake of the benefits deriving from those policies by those who are industrialists themselves. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I join Claire Adelabu in welcoming you. Claire Adelabu, oh, okay, Abdul Razak Adelabu and Chika forever. Well, Kingsley Osadolo is my name, and
Kingsley.
I join Claire in welcoming you.
The name is Claire Chikodinaka Adelabu Abdul Razak.
Oh, thanks a lot for
if you must.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we welcome you to the program this morning. The skies were grey this morning, and
it's raining.
Yes.
What do they say? It's raining.
Well, not cats and dogs yet. Not cats and dogs yet. Grey, I think the temperature.
I wonder why they say cats and dogs.
Well, we'll have to find out what that idiomatic expression, or the origin of that idiomatic expression amongst the English people. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As usual, we will have our companion segments, newspaper review, business, arts and entertainment, as well as sports. In the meantime, we're going over now to the newsroom to join the lady in red. She's wearing a red jacket, Rhoda Albu, for the morning news.
And red is trend. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Oh, that's for
Rhoda, is that what it is?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Claire and Kingsley. Good morning. We'll begin with the House of Representatives has commenced investigation on the alleged 21 billion naira fraud by rice importers. The findings reveal that some foreign investors exceeded the quota for imports with more than 5,000 metric tons, with many companies yet to pay outstanding import duties and fines for flouting government's directives.
Shall attract 10% duty rate with a levy of 20% and will be limited to the national supply gap to be determined by a committee for a period of 4 years.
By the time the policy statement was issued in July 2014, without any specific quota, and the interministerial committee that's supposed to give us the quota never sat on time to give us the direction on how to go about this thing.
Up till the end of 2012, about 2.1 million metric tons was being imported annually. That was before the introduction of the fiscal policy measure, which took effect from 1st January 2013.
On a very happy note now for the economy, major oil marketers have resolved to continue the supply of petrol to retail outlets across the country to ease the current fuel scarcity. Rising from a meeting in Abuja to brief the media, the marketers and coordinating minister for the economy say they are resolving all outstanding issues and preferring a lasting solution to the problem.
Lagos is getting better by the hour, and that because of the distance between Lagos and Abuja, the product mainly comes from Lagos. Because of the distance, it will take some time before Abuja gets to the normal position.
Meanwhile, in spite of the distribution of fuel in some parts of Lagos metropolis over the weekend, residents and commuters have continued to experience long queues in filling stations to purchase the product.
We are carrying 800 naira a year to body 2 months because of the fuel scarcity. That's why some people fear to enter the motor.
From filling station, I always sell for motor. As on my own self, now they can inside the can, I buy my fuel. Our passengers now are complaining because before we carry them 15 naira, but now it's 100 naira.
We are going to Korodula. We are paying 300 naira.
In the meantime, Information Minister Senator Patricia Kwashika says government-owned organizations have the capacity to compete favorably with their peers around the world. The minister made the remark when she visited the News Agency of Nigeria and the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria on a familiarization tour.
We have taken very forward steps in trying to reposition this agency for service delivery. Like you know, NAN is Nigeria and possibly Africa's premier news agency.
What we're trying to do is to give FRCN character, give it, some good professional outlook, both physically and in terms of the modus operandi of our own activities. And I'm truly humbled by the kind words of the Honorable Minister. I thought this was just a familiarization tour.
Give your best and help support the government. It's not always that we get what we want, but this is our country. We have to make do with what we have and to build our country together.
Now, if the dignity of man is restored through the observation of the rule of law and protection of individuals and organizations against injustice, the society will certainly be a better place. This was the thrust of discussions when the new Chief Commissioner, Public Complaints Commission in Abuja resumed duty.
Rather than waiting for people to even complain, we should review the society and the organization that give services to Nigerians, so that where we feel anything is wrong, we don't have to wait for people to complain. We give attention to those areas of concern.
President Goodluck Jonathan has appointed Ebisintie Biotoru Awudu as the new Surveyor General of the Federation. He replaces the outgoing Surveyor General, Professor Peter Nwilo. This appointment takes effect from 30th of April 2015. This is contained in a statement by the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Works, Dauda Kigbo. Until his appointment, Mr. Awudu was the Director, Planning, Research and Statistics Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation. He is an alumnus member of the Nigerian Institute. We turn our attention now to politics. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, has cleared the allegations that its National Working Committee embezzled campaign funds. The party's National Publicity Secretary, Olisa Metu, while briefing journalists in Abuja, said the party has reconciled all perceived differences among them.
The purpose of the National Working Committee, the arrears, the housing arrears, furniture arrears, and medical arrears of the working committee was paid to them in those days, and money was included for the campaign, and all this generated, and that was the basis of the 30 million that was paid to the members of working committee for the prosecution of their election. What we are saying is that based on the Freedom of Information Act, we are free to make our account public for the general public to look at.
Meanwhile, available statistics from the last elections into the National Assembly indicates that the number of women that made it to the parliament has reduced drastically. Unlike the 7th Assembly, where the women in the Senate were 7 and 24 in the House of Representatives, women in the 8th National Assembly are 24. This is made up of 8 in the Senate and 16 in the House of Representatives. National Assembly correspondent Aisha Zango Abdullahi spoke to some female legislators on their expectations.
And secondly, which will be more paramount, the issue of the Boko Haram, and thank God the military has taken over the remaining 2 local government. And the expectation is, how do we bring about development?
I believe we'll be able to work together to promote women, and we make sure that our voices are being heard, so that will give women more chances.
Issues that have to do with the maternal and the girl child education, those are normal things that we as women have to make sure that they are brought on stream.
When you see the life of a woman, we are covered by secrecy. The secrecy of who we are and the secrecy of the things we have upstairs.
Some of them share their experiences during the electioneering process.
We did our election in camp. So during the electioneering campaigns, we didn't find it easy actually, because for people that are already depressed, to go and start talking to them about politics, it was something that was really heartbreaking. But we had no option, and we thank God that they understood with us and they voted us into power.
The federal government has been urged not to relent in its effort of supporting the albinos in overcoming some of its various challenges confronting them. The president of the Albinos Foundation, Jake Apele, stated this during a visit to the management of the Nigerian Television Authority as part of preparation towards this year's National Albinism Day. Jake commended NTA's management for their unflinching support to the foundation since its inception. He said the theme for this year's National Albinism Day is mainstreaming albinism into political and socio-economic development of Nigeria.
The incoming government should also continue what the outgoing government have been doing with us. I'm also using it to talk to the albinos themselves, so please stay out of the sun. The sun is responsible for skin cancer, and if we do that, we will have a healthy life.
I also want to say that we at NTA, we've been following up the developments from your association. Let me congratulate you for sustaining this association for so long and for drawing national attention to our brothers and sisters who did not in any way choose to have the skin they're having on their body. It's natural. God knows why He created people with different colors and so on.
Responding, the Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Shola Omole, represented by the Executive Director, Special Duties, Joseph Etuk, appreciated the Foundation's gesture and promised NTA's continued support whenever the need arises. Chapters across the country, the Albino Foundation was established in the year 2006. Now, the National Steering Committee of the Second Peer Review Mechanism under the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, says Nigeria has done significantly well in the sustenance of democracy. These were the views of experts at the review workshop on domestication and ratification of standards and codes for governance in Nigeria.
To speak, there's some improvement, particularly given the testimony of the conduct of the 2015 general elections. Here is an area that Nigeria is being given a high pass mark, not only by Nigerians, but by the international community.
The outcome of the election was not surprising because we actually identified the need for the independence of INEC, and we actually identified the need for election to be fair and free.
Domestication is simply turning the international instruments we have signed into local legislation. But you now bring them home and then make them part of your domestic laws.
That concludes the news. Good Morning Nigeria now continues with Claire and Kingsley.
All right, thank you, Rhoda Obo, for the news package this morning. And then it's time to talk business. And we understand that the Accountant General of the Federation, John Otunla, extols the introduction of Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System, the IPPIS, saying that it has proven to be most efficient in payment system in the country, and of course that it conforms with global best practices. And I'm sure that Kingsley will agree this is one of the key areas that this administration, the outgoing administration, has really scored very high marks.
Well, that's true, Claire. There's no doubt about that. And the positive outcome of this effort has been the drastic reduction in the phenomenon of ghost workers, and billions of naira have been saved in the process.
All right, Kingsley. Shikola Ekbenaye will lead us on the business news this morning.
Welcome to Business News. The Accountant General of the Federation, John Otunla, says people should have no ill feelings about the Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System, IPIS, which has made payment of salaries easier in conformity with global best practices. Speaking to journalists in Abuja, Mr. Otunla said, contrary to assertions that it is only federal ministries, departments and agencies that are covered in the scheme, other subnational governments have also imbibed the scheme, which has proven to be efficient in blocking leakages and other financial malpractices in the payment systems.
There are set standards that are internationally acceptable and recognized. It means
if you pick a financial statement of any type of government in Nigeria, you'll be able to compare it to the financial statement of any other government in the world, and then it calls for what we call comparability of statements. So it means we can compare our activities with other governments in the world.
IPPIS is designed with the aim of creating a centralized database system for Nigerian public service with single, accurate source of employee information that provides integration with other business applications. The system provides a centralized database to aid government manpower planning and decision-making, facilitates automation and storage of personnel record to support monitoring of staff emolument payments against budget, as well as prevent wastage and leakages by ensuring staff remuneration is based on factually correct information. The system also assures prompt payment of salaries directly to employees' account with appropriate deduction and remittances of third-party payments. And cheering news for PMS users as 8 ships have arrived at Lagos Port with petroleum products. The Nigerian Ports Authority said on Monday in Lagos that the petroleum products include base oil, kerosene and petrol, adding that 3 other ships also arrived with rice in bags and containers. It said that NPA was expecting the arrival of 27 ships to the Lagos port. 13 of the expected ships are to sail in with containers, while 8 others are expected to arrive with food products. The food products it disclosed includes rice, bulk sugar, bulk salt, frozen fish, and bulk wheat. And now a quick look at stocks performance at the capital market. And with that, we round off business news. Good morning.
Thank you very much, there, Shike, for the business package this morning. And next for us will be a review of today's newspapers.
All right, of course, as Kingsley said, it's time to review the newspapers and see what they have on their front pages this morning. And Bayo Atoyebi is here, and Bayo, it's raining. I don't know what you feel. Is it, some of us are saying, wow, it's raining cat and dogs.
Thanks, Claire. It's a big relief from the heat wave that has swept across the country. But you know human nature. Dan Mariah once said that human nature is such that if it rains, we complain it has rained. If it is hot, we complain it is hot. If it is cold, we complain it is cold. Well, thanks to God for the rain. Clement weather.
That's right. I think probably this is the onset of the rainy season, yes. And it will remain so for the next 5-6 months before the temperatures pick up again, assuming there's no freak occurrence. Yes. Bayo, Claire has already welcomed you. We'll begin our review this morning with the Daily Trust. And of course, let me say quite clearly that one common story to the front pages that we have is a story about the PDP and the squabbles over what cost President Goodluck Jonathan the election. Well, Daily Trust below his name flag has the story. NNPC to resume oil search in Chad Basin. Details of that can be found on page 23. And PDP intensifies plot to return Mark as Senate President. That's on page 17. Lead story says Jonathan's team cost him re-election. That's according to the PDP. And then the editor's choice at the foot of the front page, Shetima, that's governor of Borno State. Boko Haram impregnative captives to have heirs. That's on page 6. And missing $20 billion. Forensic audit inconclusive. That's according to McCarthy. That's on page 25. And on page 4, tanker drivers resume fuel lifting.
Okay, and we turn to the National Mirror. It has, as Kingsley said, that story on the allegation, of course, over the PDP. But the caption is version this way: how we shared 7 billion naira campaign fund attributed to the PDP. Trade blames over electoral failure. And the very sad picture story this morning, very, very sad indeed. It's a mixed feelings, rather. One of the picture story you find there, just there you have it, is that of a child, one of the children rescued from insurgents in Sambisa Forest, handed over to the National Emergency Management Agency. And of course, the baby is a 4-day-old baby, which was among children and women rescued by Nigerian troops from insurgents in Sambisa Forest. And just on the left-hand side there, you find Boko Haram insurgents rape women to sustain their lineage. And this is coming from Shetima. You can find the details on page 52. And also trending just below that, bribery, court orders extradition to UK of ex-Minting boss. Court orders extradition to UK of ex-Minting boss. Details you can find on page 6. And threading at the bottom, again, another sad development. Gunmen kill 100 in Taraba Plateau, and pastor newlywed among the dead. You can find details on page 2. Plateau workers begin indefinite strike. And just to take you a little above the masthead, fear grips military over imminent probe and mass retirement. The details on page 2. Aviation fuel scarcity hampers airlines operations. You can find the details on page 4. Kingsley.
Yeah, the next paper for us is Vanguard. And Vanguard has the following stories on its front page. Enugu lawmakers serve Governor Chime impeachment notice. Stories in greater detail on page 8. Federal government marketers fail to agree on oil subsidy debt. That's on page 49. But the story says, we are not responsible for your loss. PDP tells GEG, that's President Goodluck Jonathan. And a number of riders to that says party was not carried along during campaigns, blames PDP's failure on hate campaign against Buhari, and threatens to publish beneficiaries of party funds. Another story on the front page there says, Buhari's cabinet, APC governors submit ministerial list. The story is in greater detail on page 9. Also on the front page, at the foot of the front page, Rivers monarch speaks from hideout. That can be found inside. And oil price down to $66 per barrel, and that's on page 9.
Okay, quickly again, on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, 100 feared killed in Taraba Plateau, and it writes with Bruno Hunter, slay 15 Boko Haram terrorists and recover vehicles. And following that lead story is a picture of a soldier. You can see the soldier there, apparently guarding women and children rescued by the Nigerian troops in Sambisa Forest just before they were handed over to NEMA. NWC, National Working Committee, not responsible for PDP's failure, says Metu. Alleges officials were left out of campaign strategy. President intervenes in party's crisis, as well as Buhari meets APC governors over ministerial list. That's just trending there. And other trending stories at the bottom. Court warns parties against contempt in Ekiti impeachment suit. And Enugu Assembly splits over impeachment notice on Chime. And reps threaten additional over alleged rice import duty waiver. Kingsley.
Daily Sun is next for us. Daily Sun has an earpiece just beside the nameplate. Bloodbath in Plateau. 11 killed, 13 houses set ablaze. The story is in greater detail on page 7. Now, lead story, how PDP betrayed Jonathan. That's according to Metu. Metu, of course, is the National Public Secretary of the PDP. The story is also on page 7. Enugu governor gets impeachment notice. Then 2 riders there. Drama as 14 lawmakers declare war on Chime. Another 8 remove speaker. Details can be found on page 11. Otuoke Varsity, that's the Federal University at Otuoke in Bayelsa State. Landlord evicts students over 24 million naira rent. Details are on page 6. And you also find a photograph that Claire referred to in one of the papers earlier of one of the hostages rescued from the terrorists in Sambisa Forest. Claire.
Okay, Nigerian pilot also leads with the story on the PDP campaign mess, and it captioned it, "We collected 360 million naira, says NWC. Ahmadu Ali handled old funds attributed to the committee, and Jonathan wades into party crisis." The details of that front page report, you can find it on page 4. FG oil marketers resolve subsidy payment row, it's on page 7. And a picture of course, the veteran actors and actresses there told the screening, during the media screening of Oloibiri. And of course, this is a thriller that, of course, is in the pipeline. Trending at the bottom, IGP sets up special squad to fight corruption in police. Biafran soldiers pardoned by Obasanjo yet to get 1.58 billion naira pension. And alleged drug offenses, Kashamu begins legal battle to stop extradition to the U.S. Reps move against rice importation, and Speaker Odigio Yegun's candidate makes case for South-South.
Okay, I also have the New Telegraph, but the front page is similar in terms of content to other stories that we had read from a number of other newspapers. I want to quickly go to the inside pages now. Just flip through to page 9 of the New Telegraph. Page 9 of New Telegraph. Controversy trails 74 new traffic lights in Abuja. That's the story there on page 9 of New Telegraph. And then we also have on page 10, that's the metro section of New Telegraph, Lagos records 12,120 rape cases. Lagos records 12,120 rape cases. That's on page 10 of New Telegraph. And another story on page 12, Hasekika, Lagos. That's the kicker, while Al-Mustafa must face death penalty. Now, the Lagos State government is reported to have said yesterday that it had not withdrawn its case against the CSO, that's Chief Security Officer to the late General Sani Abacha, saying that the appeal was still pending at the Supreme Court. Claire?
All right, and finally from me, I have the blueprint, and it leads with a different story entirely. It captions it on this way: reps summon additional over rice import scam. The details of that lead story is on page 6. And in front, the picture story, counsel to Accord Party in Oyo State with the counsel to Senator Olufemi Lalehin. Inauguration of the Election Petition Tribunal in Ibadan yesterday. 11 killed in fresh attack on Plateau Village. It's on page 5. And just below the masthead, federal government oil marketers resolved debt rift, page 38. And Jonathan failed because he didn't carry us along, Metu. Details on page 10. APC Governor Soyego in closed door meeting over ministerial list. Details you can find on page 4.
So let's go over to Bayo for a discuss of the headliners that we have ready.
Thank you, Kingsley. There is a worrying development, that a crisis in Taraba and Nasarawa. The one in Taraba is between the Tiv and the Kuteb ethnic groups. Unfortunately, it is taking a religious discoloration. Similarly, there's also a clash in Nasarawa and Plateau, which is said to be between herdsmen and some farmers. Again, there it is beginning to take some ethnic coloration. There are also forays that is said to be between military and militants, people who took up arms and are basically criminals. But the increase in such tendencies, particularly in the north central of Nigeria, is becoming worrisome. And therefore, there is need to draw attention to this negative development, particularly that we are beginning to scale down on the challenges the nation has had on insurgency. Meanwhile, Borno State Governor Kashim Shettima has advocated for proper profiling of those rescued captors, especially the ones that are pregnant. He says that the large-scale rape of women by the insurgents is to raise successors to continue their stock in trade in violence, even when the parents may have died. A coordinated approach is required by state and federal government to break the genealogy of insurgents. The insurgents have this wired belief that children fathered by them are likely to share their ideology later in life and continue with their cycle of violence as a philosophy. There's therefore the social rejection. Naturally, there will be the social rejection of mothers, of the children they bear from such rape. The governor has said that the paternity of the pregnancy of many of the girls may have to be established, and government needs medical, psychological, and other specialists to handle them. He said they should not, the children particularly, should not be stigmatized, neither should their mothers. We must all show them love because they are innocent kids by the time they are born. There are indications that the glut that plagued the world in the oil market may soon be over. Already, oil price rose to $67 per barrel, particularly for the Brent crude, which saw a 6-year low at $45.19 in January. U.S. crude is now at $59.37, and the price rise is due to the persistent fall in the production from the U.S. active rigs for 21 weeks now. It may be recalled that our budget for 2015 is predicated on $53 per barrel. National Assembly members who did not succeed in their election bid have commenced moving their personal effects from their offices. They are of two categories: those who failed to win the primaries and those who actually won the primaries, contested but eventually lost to win the mandate from the electors. One legislator said, "Soldier go, soldier come, National Assembly remain." I thought he should have said, "Distinguished members go, distinguished senators go, honorable members go, but the National Assembly remain." A House of Rep member-elect from Kano has advocated for 50% pay cut for the president-elect, lawmakers, and other appointees. Abdullahi Gaya, who was former Commissioner of Finance in Kano, has won election to the National Assembly, and he says, in his opinion, the president, lawmakers, ministers, advisors, special assistants should agree to 50% slash of their take-home pay to boost the capital expenditure of the budget. This is the only way to help rally and support the new government that will be coming in. And this, by contrast, on May Day, is the opposite of what happened around the world. There were calls around the world in Turkey, in Korea, and even in Nigeria for increase in the take-home pay of workers. Similarly, the National Assembly have also been enjoined by the Anglican Synod of Abeokuta. The Bishop of Egba Diocese, Reverend Emmanuel Adekule, has said they should reduce their outrageous take-home perquisite and allowances as being collected. He says that let us appeal to the conscience of incoming legislators to be courageous enough to cancel outrageous perquisites and help boost the economy of the nation. Some of the legislators-elect have also commented in this direction. A senator-elect from Kogi State and another senator-elect from Bayelsa State have advocated the same thing. It may be also recalled that Justice Mahmoud Mohammed, the CJN of Nigeria, once said that one of the things that is creating serious tension within the polity is the high take-home perquisites of the politicians that is making politics a do-or-die affair. A group of 14 lawmakers in Enugu State Legislature yesterday converged at 6:28 in the morning and served impeachment notice on Governor Sullivan Chime. They also suspended 3 members, Deputy Speaker and Deputy House Leader, and another member. Soon after, immediately they left at 8:28, at 7:05 in fact, the suspended Deputy Speaker with 6 other legislators also converged with an alternative means and moved ahead to impeach Speaker Eugene Odo. They have now swelled their own membership to 9. The group of 9 suspended Speaker Eugene Odo and 7 other members in their group. Chinedu Nwaba has now been elected as their Speaker. We now have a situation of a divided legislature, which is becoming a common practice around the country. There is a divided legislature in Edo State, Rivers State, Ekiti State, Kebbi, Adamawa, and now Enugu. this unparliamentary democracy is taking roots across the country.
Yes, and that's worrisome.
Yes,
it's very, very worrisome. Imagine how many weeks we have to
end of
the term.
Current legislative
yes.
Yes.
And all this is happening. It's very worrisome.
And there are also indications that the PDP in Lagos, led by Jimmy Agbaje, has filed a petition at the Lagos State Tribunal to challenge the election of Akinwumi Ambode. It may be recalled that Jimmy Agbaje had actually called Ambode and congratulated him before even the collation of results were concluded. However, upon the conclusion of collation, one Tajuddin Agboro, who was a PDP representative, refused to sign the result sheet. He had alleged that the process was marred by irregularities. A petition filed on 30th of April at the Lagos Petitions Tribunal is contesting the election on 3 grounds. One is non-compliance with Section 7 of the Electoral Act that required the use of card readers. Another is that APC did not comply with Section 85 of the Electoral Act in giving 21 days notice the process that led to the evolving of Ambode as his gubernatorial candidate. The sentencing of Michael Igbenedion to 2 years in prison with an option of fine of 3 million for a fraud of 25 billion is raising eyebrows in legal circles. This especially so that someone, Patrick Boybodin, who was said to have been assisted the Igbenedion, got 2 years in prison without an option of fine. The judge ordered PMC, the company involved, to pay 1 million naira for each of the 10 count charges. The judge also got the company liquidated with all assets forfeited to the federal government. Is it a case of discretion on the part of the judge, or is the judge hand-tied by what the prosecutor presented to court? Is it a challenge to the judge on his discretionary powers between minimum sentencing and maximum sentencing? We may be recalled that there was issue about pension fraud where some persons were convicted and the fines imposed were said to be ridiculous, so much so that it attracted the attention of the National Judicial Council. The Federal High Court in Abuja has cautioned the legislators in Ekiti to maintain status quo ante until the case before it is determined on May 21st. In the same vein, at the Federal University Otuoke, students have been evicted from their hostel. That's what the story you read on. They had a hostel, a 52-bedroom hostel, acquired for them by the state government as its counterpart support for the Federal University. Because rent are being owed, the students were evicted. And the Dean of the Student Affairs, Dr. Marcelina Ofoha, had to supervise the students quietly so that they were evicted. But she has expressed the hope that this will be resolved between the landlord and the state government as the students may be able to get back to their hostels.
Well, just 2 quick points, and these points have to do with the stories out of Sambisa, the hostages who have been rescued. It's a bit of a concern, I should think, to observers that yesterday, if you recall, we read a story that when some of the Nigerian troops went into Sambisa forest, they were in fact shot at by some of the women who were hostages because women had been trained by the terrorists, to handle weapons. I'm just wondering, now the hostages have been freed and the hostages are being handed over to NEMA.
Yes.
I'm wondering, is NEMA the appropriate agency for a de-radicalization program? Because that's very crucial. Now, if the hostages have undergone some indoctrination, based on the evidence that they were the ones who were firing as soldiers, should NEMA be the first agency to handle this, or should there be a subsequent program, to deal with that aspect of de-radicalizing? And that's one. Second point, and this is very touchy. Yes, it was always suspected that the terrorists, of course, were going to try, to extend their murderous lineage, and we have a number of women who have been impregnated. What happens when the babies are delivered? you can't possibly find their fathers because the fathers are terrorists who may have been killed or who have probably fled, into other locations. I think that there's some social policy that is required, and it would warrant, if you like, the opinions and support of various advocacy groups. What do you think, Bayo?
I think that could form part of the rehabilitation of the victims of insurgency plan, a kind of a Marshall plan to rehabilitate them after that. But those that were rescued, they fall in two categories. There's a tendency that when people are captured or kidnapped for a long time, they tend to have sympathy with those who captured them. It's a simple psychology of victim and captors. And therefore, particularly those women who were trained to handle arms, they saw themselves as part of their captors, and they took on our soldiers. Luckily, they were overcome during the encounter. However, you may recall that the Defense Headquarters has said that before these captors were released, they are supposed to go through a process of debriefing, and that is to probably categorize them among those who are captors and those who were combatants, and then they will know how to handle them. But it is a worrying situation that needs the attention of the high command of the Nigerian military and also with experts among doctors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That phenomenon you refer to, the psychological phenomenon of a captor now sympathizing, of a captive now sympathizing with his captor, is referred to as the Stockholm Syndrome.
Yes.
This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We are taking a short break now. When we return, it will be time for us to go into our principal subject for conversation this morning, namely agenda setting for the manufacturing subsector.
Hello, my name is Malik, and this is my Kemu story. We're all addicted to mobile phones, but I didn't realize how huge until I started selling on the internet with Kemu.com. In a few clicks, I listed my products online.
Start your business today. It's that easy. Kemu.com.
A hectic lifestyle or overeating can cause a burning pain in your chest. That's heartburn. Take Gaviscon. One dose relieves in 3 minutes to soothe the pain of heartburn. It goes straight to the source to work for hours, providing long-lasting relief.
That's why I recommend Gaviscon.
I recommend Gaviscon. Gaviscon, fast relief you can actually feel.
If symptoms persist after 3 days, consult your doctor.
Do you know that you are exposed to up to 100 illness-causing germs every day?
I encourage my kids to learn new things, and if they get hurt, I rely on my Dettol to fight germs. It's like my own first aid kit.
My family needs protection from germs. My Dettol disinfects surfaces and clothes, keeping them clean and safe from germs.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. As we indicated just before we went on that short break, this morning we are discussing the manufacturing subsector as part of our agenda setting series for the incoming administration, of which, of course, will be sworn in on the 29th of May. We're now joining Salihu Abdullahi for a backgrounder on that subsector for us to begin our discourse this morning.
For some time now, manufacturing accounted for less than 5% of GDP at the inception of Fourth Republic in 1999, but experienced 4.9% growth the next year. Due to the high cost of production that result from inadequate infrastructure, Nigeria's manufacturing capacity utilization, industries as a whole contributed 33% of GDP in the year 2000, mostly in the oil sector. The textile industry is still in early stages of development. Between 60% and 70% of all raw materials used in textile production come from local sources. Foreign investment in the textile industry is led by Chinese and Indian investors. Nigeria has also designed the Nigerian Automobile Industry Development Plan to provide the environment for the orderly development of the sector. This has resulted in the reopening of moribund textile mills, which has saved over 8,000 jobs and created 5,000 new jobs. Other areas of expansion include cement production, tire production, and furniture assembly through the disbursement of the 100 billion naira intervention fund in the subsector. Government's cotton and textile policy is aimed at further strengthening the sector. In the first quarter of 2013, economic reports of the CBN said the federal government's $1.13 billion non-oil sector earnings in the first quarter of 2013 were driven largely by receipt in the industrial sector. Other important programs include the launch of the National SMEs Program, the National Enterprise Development Program, increased partnership between government and the private sector in the roads, agriculture, and power.
All right, Salisu Abdullahi's report there, of course, leading us into our subject for conversation this morning. And we have two guests right here in our Abuja studios, and I'll quickly just welcome them and introduce them to you. We have in our other studio here in Abuja, Ahmed Rufai. He is, of course, the immediate past president of NASIMA, that's a National Association of Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Well, thank you, Alhaji Rufai, for coming.
Thank you very much.
And also with us here in Abuja is Mustafa Bello. Mustafa Bello is a well-known face. He's a former executive secretary, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission at IPC, and of course, chairman, Invest in Northern Nigeria Limited. We thank you very much for coming, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Claire, we also have joining us from the Enugu Network Center, Dr. Ifeanyi Okafor. You can see him right there on the right-hand side of your split screen. Is the Chief Executive Officer of Juhel Nigeria Limited, manufacturers of pharmaceutical products. Dr. Okafor, would like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Kingsley, I'm Dr. Ifeanyi Okoye, Dr. Okafor Kingsley.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought I was misdirected about that. Okoye, that's right? Hello? Hello?
Okoye.
A wrong rendering of your correct name. I apologize for that. Our next guest, of course, is joining us from our Lagos Network Center. Lagos Network Center, Dr. Oladimeji Alo, of course, I won't miss that. He's, as I said, former Director General of the Financial Institutions Training Center and currently Chairman of West African Paints. Dr. Alo, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Chairman Badger Paints.
Well, some days are like this. Probably, Claire, we overslept this morning, and then I said I wasn't going to miss that. Unfortunately, I mixed it up. But help it. Yes, we just couldn't help it. Let me apologize again. Occasionally, we get misdirected by the facts put before us. Dr. Alo, let's begin with you at the Lagos Network Center. You've been in the financial training business, and now you're also chair of a listed firm on the stock exchange. Now, how has it been in the past 4 years? What has worked and what hasn't worked going now into a new administration?
In the level of contribution of the manufacturing sector to the GDP. In fact, some of the statistics that we have showed that 2014, there was an improvement over 2013. But of course, the sector is still faced with several challenges, but we are making incremental progress as far as the statistics go. So it's good news, and we'll expect that the incoming administration will do more of those things that we've talked about over the years to ensure that those who operate in that sector have the right environment to prosper. The challenge has always been that the service sector had grown at a faster rate, which is a good thing, but the manufacturing sector has a higher capability to help solve the problem of unemployment. And that is where you actually have a lot of value add. And so there's a need to refocus policy to help operators in that sector.
Take Dr. Ifeanyi Okoye from our Enugu Center. Dr. Okoye, let's look at the statistics before us. We understand from available reports that the manufacturing subsector has over 70% capacity utilization, but currently doing less than half of that. Again, in terms of contributions to the GDP, the manufacturing sector at the moment is doing under 10. I think about 9. I'm not sure of my figures now, but according to the reports we have this morning, is doing 10. That we have the capacity of even doing much more than that. Just oppose this against the policies enunciated within the past 4 years. How do you think we've done?
Thank you very much, Claire. You said it rightly. We are currently between 9 to 10%. The contribution we are making to the GDP. However, we can do a lot more. The administration that is living now tried a little bit. They tried to handle one of the toughest problems of manufacturers, which is long, affordable funding. When you have facilities that are very expensive, the interest rate being very high, and then you are allowed to operate within 4 to 5 years, that's not enough for any manufacturer. The government tried, and they did this through what they call intervention, through Central Bank and the Bank of Industry, where they tried to get manufacturers to enjoy single-digit interest rate. But this shouldn't be in form of intervention. It should be a permanent factor, because no manufacturer can survive with interest of between 19 to 25%. So what I'm trying to say is that the incoming government should, as much as possible, make it very, very possible for manufacturers to enjoy low interest, at least single-digit interest rate, and long-term loans of not less than 10 to 15 years. This is the only way that a manufacturer can come out and survive. There are a lot of other factors, which maybe if it gets back to me, I'll be able to explain further.
Excuse me, just before, Dr. Okoye, considering the fact that the many decades of stagnation in this sector and what has been put in, inputs from the outgoing administration within the past 4 years, I'm sure you know that the government of President Goodluck Jonathan did put a lot of efforts and action, so to speak, into reviving this sector. I'd just like you to just point out some of those policies that you think have been able to help spur this sector up. Because right now, I think we're doing much better than previous years.
Yeah, they tried a lot. The government that is living now tried a lot. Like I said, for the first time, we started having what you call intervention, where we had the manufacturers had opportunity to work as single digit with BOI and Bank of Industry. And then in the area of clearing of goods from the port, they also made it possible that manufacturers could receive their goods faster than they used to be. Before now, I know sometimes it gets up to 6 weeks, 1 month to 6 weeks before people clear their goods from the port. But the outgoing administration tried their best and reduced it to within at least 1 week to 2 weeks. Also, they tried by establishing the bonded warehouse issue, where some manufacturers are allowed to somehow receive their goods in their warehouses before they could process the issues of clearance of the goods at the port. So the other aspect is the fact that at least there was a good rapport, or there has been a good rapport between the government and the manufacturers. And that's why it was possible to have issues that favored the vehicle manufacturers, motor manufacturers in Nigeria. And then the textile industries that also enjoyed their own part of it. And then a few other industries had the opportunity of enjoying the largesse of the outgoing government. However, there are still a lot of areas the incoming government will have to do something. Like I said, the issue of intervention should not come. We should have a permanent single-digit facility for manufacturers. And then I believe, it's not just fund and order. There are other little things that deplete the money of manufacturers. I'll tell you that in Nigeria today, most factories have their own security men guarding the factories because of the little insecurity in the country. And thank God the current government is doing a lot to reduce that, but the incoming government should ensure that manufacturers don't have to pay extra to have security within their industries. I believe the incoming government should be able to do that. And we know about the problems of a lot of other infrastructures, like roads and all that. We need a lot, most especially in the southeastern part of this country. The road that connects Lagos, Onitsha, Enugu, Port Harcourt. Onitsha to Port Harcourt is a mess, and other linking roads, because it's too easy for any manufacturer to evacuate his goods if the roads are not there. And if the incoming government will do better in that, that would be a very good improvement. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, Dr. Okoye, speaking to us from the Enugu Network Center, thank you for your perspective. Now we're turning now to the Abuja studios. Engineer Ahmed Rufai, former national president of NASIMA, was introduced earlier. Engineer Rufai, what has worked and what do you hope for after May 29th for manufacturers?
Well, thank you very much for being on this discussion. Let me say in the first instance that the failure of our industrial sector has gradually been receding in the last, let me say, 25 years or thereabout. And this is primarily due to lack of consistency in the policy of government in promoting industries. Number one, you realize that power is an essential factor and a determinant of manufacturing. Because if individual industry will have to have their power supply, it will increase the cost of production. So the power sector actually has been played upon over the years with millions of dollars being pumped in with effect. Number two, the security aspect means a lot. And this, as everybody will say clearly, that it has deteriorated as though we are in a war zone. And I think this needs to be addressed. Let me say, for clarity purposes, in the question of policy that I said, when I was president of NASIMA, which is nearly 23 years back, of 24, I remember a vivid case of Berek factory, which had one factory at Isolo and one factory in Kano. And what killed those factories was dumping. And in that case, you realize that Berek Industries went into the level of investigating where the dumping materials were coming in from. And they did. And when they did that, it was reported to the government, people were positioned, and the ship arrived with the dumping goods. But behold, in less than 3 weeks, the whole ship disappeared with the containers inside Nigeria. And that is the beginning of the death of Berek. And many, many, many industries. Virtually, even as at today, there is no 6 months that passes we don't carry the burial of some industries. So I think the government needs to be consistent in its policy. Number two.
Which policy would you like to see some measure of consistency in?
Well, when a thing, for instance, you have a factory that is producing parts of vehicles, per se, and we have an assembly plant in Nigeria. Now, if these manufacturers of parts are available, battery, brake parts, tires, and the rest, there should be a policy that does not attach itself to the politics, partisan politics of this country, so that government upon government will still allow those to continue to feed those manufacturers. And two, when you take the case of, let's say, rice importation or wheat importation, there was a time it was banned, and due to international politics, suddenly this was again lifted when we were already reaching a level of high production of these products locally, including the quality. So these are the type of consistency that I mean. Now, thirdly, where on earth in this world where you find diesel more expensive than petrol? It's only in Nigeria. Diesel is a second-grade product of the oil, of the crude oil. How come? Then it means we have something wrong within our system. Because with diesel, that's where the trailers use, that's what the locomotives use, and many other factories. So how come about? And when you look at it again, I remember vividly well that when I was a member of Vision 2010, we had the whole sector of the oil sector from upstream to downstream. And we had all former ministers because we were giving immunity to criticize and tear whoever we want to. And in the process, we realized that the cost of production per liter of petroleum product was far, far lower than what is now being presented to us to say even there is subsidy. I don't believe there is even any subsidy ever existing. It's a hoax. Okay,
we'll look at, thank you for the issues that you have raised. Of course, you mentioned some of the challenges bedeviling this subsector. But let me return to the former Executive Secretary, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. I particularly like the couching of the name of your company, Invest in Northern Nigeria Limited. It appears to be like a movement. But again, I wish all Nigerians will, participate in this kind of movement, Invest in Nigeria, Limited movement. And that's precisely what some of the policies, enunciated by the CBN, by the federal government, was out to do. Take, for instance, the depreciation of, the adjustment of the naira, of the value of the naira. That was meant to encourage local production and consumption of locally made goods. But there are some products for which raw materials are imported. The monetary policies affected manufacturing sector in Nigeria.
Okay, let me first thank you very much for the opportunity to be on this panel. And perhaps let me make a reference to the comments by Dr. Okoye, because he has spoken about some of the challenges of the industrial sector. And I believe that we should even go deeper than what he has stated, because I think he has just spoken of the issues on the surface, what he is trying to raise, and then to see how we can help the incoming administration to build upon what I will say Obasanjo, late Yaradua, Goodluck Jonathan administration have rolled out in terms of policies. He has spoken about issue of single-digit interest rate for the industry to support their ability to access financing and be able to now use it over a long term. That's right. So he mentioned two challenges.
Cost of funds.
Yes, you know, the cost of the fund and then the period, the tenor. But I think we need to look deeper than what he has mentioned, because to me, these are just measures that are transient, temporary, but to look deeper into the genesis of even the high cost of the funds themselves. First, I have, as the Chief Executive Officer of NIPC then, and before then as Minister of Commerce, we have taken a lot of interest in terms of trying to find out or establish why are the cost of funds in Nigeria in particular high. Of course, I realize Brazil has the same challenge. Countries, some of the developing countries have these challenges. So, and I will not go into the text, but that actually the substantial part of the cost of funding in Nigeria is largely because of the cost of the management by the banks. It's to the minimum of the 70%, which, I mean 7%, which they normally insist on. If you look at the case, yes, if you look at the case of Bank of Industry giving them facilities to manage on their behalf, saying, okay, we will manage at least 7%, then plus. The structure of the emoluments and the benefits, bank managers, executives, board chairmen, and so on and so forth, then you will understand why the cost of fund is high. So government needs to look at this, see to central bank, see how we can bring down this cost by getting these layers of management of banks to please sacrifice something, even if it is 25% of what they take. Because I know a managing director of a bank takes an average of about 180 million doing a service to the nation. That will bring down the cost of funding. That's one.
Wait, just before you proceed, I'm sorry to interject. This is a buttress of the point you are making. This will be the private sector equivalent of what is being canvassed for the public sector in terms of reducing the cost of governance through a slash in the pay of public officers. Please proceed. Yes.
Now, the second one, he has now spoken about now if we do that, we will be able to get the single digit even lower.
That's right.
Then he spoke about the tenor. Now, the tenor is not possible because most banks are in a hurry to make money. But we have to look at how do we make it possible for us to have a longer period. Now, we have to address the issue of the challenge of infrastructure, because the cost of doing business, as rightly mentioned by some of my colleagues on this panel, is not only high, but it's actually skyrocketing. And how do we address it? Now, I have said, unfortunately, when we left cabinet during President Obasanjo, that the idea of West African gas pipeline came. If I was in cabinet, not cabinet, and people like General Danjuma, people like Mala Adamu Chiroma, people like Malan Sanzam Gondaura, we will never have allowed President Obasanjo to venture into sending our gas through West African gas pipeline project. We need the gas resources as fuel and feedstock to be able to support industries. Most of the industries our colleagues have mentioned on this panel that have gone under have done so because they are living on diesel. Now, someone has complained on the cost of diesel.
That's the energy cost.
It costs you 1/100th of what we expend on diesel to drive your system on gas. So why send our gas to Benin, Togo, and Ghana to generate power and send it back to us to buy? When we need it, all the industries you have around Ibadan are dead. Move to Ilorin, come to Kaduna, go to Kano, move to Maiduguri and Bauchi and Jos and so on. They are all dead because they are they are trying to survive. Now the cost, yes, the cost of doing business has gone high to the extent that they can't survive. So obviously the best thing to do is to close and then begin to import. So I think the incoming administration has to revisit the issue of the contract with the Koreans, which unfortunately was terminated, again, unfortunately, by late President Yar'Adua under a due process issue. Because we need to revisit it, get the gas supplied to the entire country, networked, so that industries can hook up to that and use it, generate power, if they need to do so, use it as fuel, as well as feedstock. So if we are able to address this, banks, financial institutions, now will have access to so much money that they can afford to now extend the tenor for another 5 year, which Dr. Okoye is talking about, to up to 25, to even 50-year facilities. Without that, there is no bank that can advance you a facility when they know that they need to look after themselves and all these high costs of doing business. They have to run gensets, they have to run their vehicles, they have to maintain their staff, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the areas that we need to address first. Then we can now be competitive. And then the issue of the exports, which you have just raised, we will be able to now actually have so much to send around. The Dangote Group and the few other major enterprises that we have been able to now successfully push to become multinationals are able to supply the neighboring countries because they are on products or commodities that are actually in demand around us. Most of these countries import them. If they have the facility or the means to manufacture them locally in their countries, they won't need us because obviously the costs and the prices of these products are substantially high. But they can't afford it, so obviously they have to buy from us. So what we need to do is actually to address our infrastructure issue. Someone raised the issue of power. We have 10 thermal power plants built between late Yar'Adua and the current president. But unfortunately, they are not able to function because we don't have gas resources to supply them. It is a pity that we only remembered that we needed gas for them after we finished developing them. And today, most of them are essentially idle or are running as maybe 10–15% of their capacity because there isn't enough gas available.
What do you think about the privatization of the power sector?
Well, obviously, it's quite a good thing because government is not the best manager. Private sector is always the best. But the issue is when you don't have the fuel to feed in these plants, then how do you transfer them to the private sector? How do they manage them? And that's why you keep having this epileptic supply. I understand we have less than 3,000 megawatts, for the whole country currently, when capacity actually exists for up to 10,000 megawatts, but you can't generate it because these plants don't have the fuel to drive them. So obviously, again, the incoming administration will have to focus on, I said, the infrastructure of the gas, distribution network, as well as the gas gathering and processing facility itself. Then we will have enough to supply all these plants. Then we have enough electricity. Then lastly, we need to address the issue of the distribution infrastructure. Because what you have in this country does not even have the capacity to deliver 6,000 megawatts, even if we generate 10,000. We don't have that capacity. Then it's a radial network that you have. You don't have a looped network. So anytime you have a disruption along a particular line, certainly the entire end there gets darkened out. So we need to actually sit and think of, look, what do we need to do so as to be able to now have enough power, and other gas resources, for the industry and the entire country.
Well, Alhaji Mustafa Bello, thank you for your perspectives, as we also thank the other guests on this program. We're still continuing. I just wanted to make a few observations before I go over to Dr. Alo at our Lagos Network Center. You were talking, for instance, about the transmission of power, which is generated. I think the transmission company of Nigeria is working on that, creating a loop rather than the radial system that we have at the moment. You also talked about gas production and distribution. These are matters that are embedded in the gas master plan and other issues, for instance, gas supplies to companies in the Lagos area. But you raised a very important point about the cost of corporate governance. Now, Dr. Alo, of course, you are a corporate czar, and you've also been training financial players in the institutions. This was some time ago. You've listened to the contributions by the other three guests. When you had your first shot, it was brief. I would like you, to play on the field and take up any of the issues you would like to comment on before we go into specific areas of our discourse.
Thank you very much. I listened to my colleagues on some of the points they raised. Perhaps because of my own background in the financial services sector before crossing over to manufacturing, I tend to have a different view on some of the issues that they raised. For instance, as desirable as a single-digit lending rate would be, I don't think it's something we should do through fiat, through asking to have a concession for a sector. In my view, part of the problem we have in this country is that we tend to take sectors in silos without addressing things holistically. And when you do that, you create problems of rent, you create problems of corruption. You want to say, oh, agric, let's focus on agric. Our challenge, as far as I'm concerned, is there is a lot of indiscipline. There is a lot of corruption in all over the sectors. And that is why you needed to address things systematically. Let's look at the issue of low lending rate. I don't believe that it is necessarily because bank executives earn a lot that the rates are high. What we need to remember is that it's supply and demand. If the level of saving is low, then you don't have the fund to lend. If the banks have to spend a lot of their money to provide their own police force, a lot of money to generate their own power, a lot of money to spend on their own computer system, and they, of course, necessarily would have to put that as part of their own cost of doing business, and you cannot get low interest rates. So what we need to have is first to encourage a saving culture in the country, and secondly to address the issue of infrastructure, which adds to the cost of doing business for the banks. The other point I think we need to make also, I agree with the point about inconsistencies in government policies. But why do we have inconsistencies? We have that because of special interest groups. Government would say, I'm removing subsidy from A today. Tomorrow, some other group will go and put pressure on them, and they will lift it. Today, government says we want to have value add to cocoa, and people went and established cocoa beans factory, got money from banks. 2 years down the road, the government now allowed people to export cocoa raw. And what you tend to find is the quality of our leadership. We do not have leadership that can state the cause. We do not have leadership that can resist special interest group. And you find that many of these companies who lap on government policies approach the banks and got facilities to establish all of these factories. When these policies change, they default. And when you default, when the default rate is high, and so all of these things should be looked at together. I agree also that we have major challenges of infrastructure. Power, for example, the factory that I sit on, I note that every month we rate the availability, we get statistics of the availability of power supply from the national grid. And that's a challenge. When the power supply is low, then you spend more on providing power yourself. The other point we also not considered is the road infrastructure. If you manufacture in Lagos and you distribute across Nigeria, you need to have these things move around. It costs a lot of money. Then the challenge of things like government agencies that they deal with to look at standards, to import things, to clear goods, all of this have to be looked at holistically. Again, I believe that we need to be serious as a country. The Alaji spoke about Vision 2010. A lot of energy went into that. We also later on spoke about Vision 2020. I had a small role to play in that one. The question is, what has become of Vision 2020? What has become of FSS 2020? You know, you have a system where there is so much indiscipline. We like to posture, we like to talk about cliches, but when it comes down to actually implementing things, we don't do it. So for me, the new coming administration needs to do a number of things. One, we need to have a leadership that is clear-headed as to where it wants to go. Secondly, we need to address this issue of indiscipline. There is too much interplay of interest groups who do not mean well for the country. Look at the issue of petrol subsidy that we're talking about today. Everybody is now queuing up. We're having hardship for the people. We should have removed the subsidy 1 year ago. Why do we lack the courage to do that? Why do we postpone the evil day? Look at the challenge around issue of fertilizers and the issue of people importing rice and getting. Why, for goodness sake, we would give anybody to import waiver to import rice? If you must eat rice, pay for the price of rice at the going rate. So we create pockets of incentive. We call it incentive, but we create pockets for people to make money and mix the system. And this creates problems for us, and we go from one to the other. For me, we need to have a clear-headed leadership. We need to have commitment to implementation. 3, we need to deal with special interest groups. As we are sitting down here, they are already making their own permutations as to how to corner the current incoming government. And so the next thing you have is that a new cesspool has been created where people will make money. Today it's fertilizer, tomorrow it's rice importation, next day it is fuel importation. And the question is, we all know these things. None of this is new. 2-3 years ago, we said we are going to stop giving waivers and concession. Why are we still talking about waiver and concession in 2015? So to me, it's a matter of the leadership. If we have the right leadership, if we have the right commitment, and we institute a structure that guarantees discipline. Today, there is no incentive to produce anything. All you need to know is know people in government, and you make your money.
All right, Dr. Oladimeji Alo, thank you very much for those contributions. From you, you have said single-digit lending rate, very desirable, but shouldn't be done by fiat or by sector. It should be viewed holistically. You have also raised the issue of leadership and structure. Alhaji Bello, I'm sure he has clarifications to make. He doesn't seem to agree with some points that you have raised, and Kingsley also has a question. But gentlemen, we will take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our conversation. All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA, and we're looking at efforts at reviving the manufacturing subsector, and of course, in our series of setting agenda for the incoming administration. Just before we went on that very short break, Dr. Oladimeji Alo was speaking to us from our Lagos window, and I said earlier that Alhaji Mustafa Bello would rebel. Kingsley, you have a question to
yes,
pop up.
Before I would like Dr. Alo to take this along. You asked the question, what happened to Vision 2010? What happened to Vision 2020? I'm wondering, at some point, the best of each of these was taken and then grafted onto the other, and then you had the transformation agenda, out of which we have Nigerian industrial revolution plan, and out of that industrial revolution plan you have had the automotive policy which is working. Are you satisfied with that, or you have some disagreement with that perspective?
Well, if you've been involved in strategic planning and implementation, you don't take a strategic document and pick elements of it and implement it in a staccato manner. You must take a strategic document as an holistic document. You cannot, I mean, look at the automobile industry thing. I mean, we've had the argument about it and the debate about it. The question is, can you take that in isolation? If you look at the Vision 2020 document, it's an holistic thing that addresses a host of issues. So you cannot take elements of it and put it in what we call a transformation. So that's not the way it's done. I mean, many companies in Nigeria have been involved in strategic planning over the years, and they've done it successfully. Every company will tell you that you cannot just do that. You cannot isolate one or two measures and put it in another grand plan and expect that it will work. You must have a commitment to implement the document so that all the inter-network, interrelationship that is envisaged work together. And I don't know how far the automotive thing is working. I don't know how far it is working. To me, it was merely a political thing.
Well, Dr. Alo, thank you. Now we'll come to Alhaji Mustafa Bello, former minister and chief executive of NIPC. One of the key points that...
Now chairman of investment.
Where many titles, we'll take the one that is most appropriate, Claire. One of the key points that Dr. Alo raised has to do with pressure from special interest groups. And we have seen the knock-on effect. First, on dumping. for instance, and then it may also have to do with all other things that, get wrong with policy implementation. How can we avoid, how can we reduce the impact of special interest pressure groups on the incoming administration?
Well, I think the easiest way is to free the system. Freeing the system in the sense that we should allow, every agency, the independence to implement the rules, regulations, guidelines, whatever, without interference. Now, if we're able to do that, then obviously you will minimize all these issues that you have raised. Someone spoke about something like double standards, that today you see concessions issued here and there and so on and so forth. But I must say that to the best of my knowledge, and for the period I have been in government, and that's about 16 years, I would say that I think there is some level of consistency in terms of policies. Yes, once in a while you find some bits and pieces of distortions here and there, for specific reasons. But I think there was that level of stability, and that's why we're able to establish or sustain a growth, of 10.4 in 2002, and then level to around 7%, up to this time, until when we re-evaluated our economy, and then came down to around 5 point something. So I think to some extent government had been really sincere in that. I will not say absolutely, but to some extent I think something fine has been done. But agencies must be given the freedom to be able to implement and enforce. If we're able to achieve that, then obviously all these issues that my colleagues are raising will just be things that we can find disappearing on their own. Because a regimented society or system actually brings about this kind of issues that you speak about. I was lucky to be on the board of ESCOM, that is the electricity company. I tell you that on that board we were awarding procurement of up to 10.8 billion rands, which is about $1 billion US, and that's to build a nuclear power plant. And we never saw any National Assembly. We never saw any minister. We never sought for any approval. But we had internal checks and control systems that were really supporting us to be able to implement the things without hindrance, without having to go through any issues or controversies, because we were following the laid down rules and regulations. So I must say that we must try to introduce something like that in the system here, in the society here, so as to quicken the processes, fast track the processes that we get things done, as well as turn out results much, much faster. Here, unfortunately, a small thing, you need to get to the next level of approval, and then above that, you have to go to that higher. Now it all creates interest and then creates difficulties and challenges and delays, and that's why they have to go through such processes. In that board that I served, we never had that kind of delay because we were independent, we were free. So I think government has to really free agencies, to the extent that they can implement things without having to go through all these nasty processes that actually are time-consuming, delaying, and of course create interest and challenges.
Okay, let's get back to, of course, Alhaji Ahmed Rufai, the former president of NASIMA. You've heard what some of our guests, of course, all of them, have said. They have enumerated some of the things that they think the incoming administration could or can do to, of course, ginger up this sector. But Nigeria continues to be the toast of world economies. And we're aspiring in the next 5 years to become that, to attain that. That's, of course, one of the super economies in 2020. What specific, like I said earlier, I know you have mentioned the issue of infrastructure, the issue of roads, that is being done at the moment. We know how much effort federal government has done. We know, of course, the issue of power, but what intervention can support the realization of this goal? It's just the next 5 years.
Well, thank you very much. Let me say one important thing, which if this new government takes and look into, will do a lot to promote in the rapid industrialization of this country. That is to separate partisan politics with business. As my colleague, Engineer Mustafa, was talking, what was his experience in South Africa, why should it be that when a government comes into power, they start looking at this man who is an opposition, let's deal with him, then measures will be taken to counterproduce what he's doing in order that his industry will die and will come hands begging to that. This has been the pattern of this country for quite some time. I remember when Peugeot Pan was established in Kaduna, certain specifications were put for distributors and workshops. These people took a lot of money to set up these ultra-modern workshops all over to meet the standards of France. As soon as the government changed, new distributors were appointed, and these people have gone. So when you are traveling along the roads now, you'll find a lot of these standard workshops have become ghost towns. Now, so this inconsistency are some of the, and the government must do every effort to shield itself away from this pressure group, unless it becomes essential that they must heed to. Secondly, I was in the government some 38 years back or so, before when I left. What is happening in this country is that the civil servant of this country believe they know all and they do all. Have no respect for other professionals outside. What I mean is, for instance, if they are talking about industries, they need to involve those who are in the field doing it in order to see what is their input and experience. And I'm telling you this even on the research. When I was in Nasima, you find that there is a missing link between what government is researching and what is reality on the ground. The same thing with the policies of industries. So the government, at its thinking level, must involve the private sector so that their own input would be considered. But today, the civil servants look at, even if I go to any government now, they look at me as one yo-yo-yo person who has nothing to contribute other than looking for a contract. That's the impression of the civil servant. And unless this syndrome is removed, to make sure that I have a brain, I have gone through the system, and I know what it is, and I'm now in where I know my shoe is pinching me because it's my money that I'm spending, that should be respected. So this is one way that I believe the government can do. Two, the private sector too should be empowered. For instance, today you find many of the businessmen that are caught in this 419 are not members of the organized private sector, and they have wielding powers up to the bedroom of the president of this country.
That's what I was referring to as the pressure of special interest, part of the pressure of special interest groups. Engineer, I would like to pause you in the meantime. I return to our Enugu Network Center, where the CEO of Juhel Nigeria Limited, Dr. Okoye, spoke to us earlier. Dr. Okoye, there's one area that I would like you to address very briefly. We're discussing the agenda for the incoming administration with regard to the manufacturing subsector. In other words, we're looking at government, usually located in states and in local governments. Now, what, in your opinion, should be the corresponding responsibilities of states and local governments? Because sometimes we hear that factories, are usually at the mercy of all kinds of characters, including roughnecks who are coming to collect taxes and levies and all kinds of things, even times shutting down your operations. What should be the corresponding role of states and local governments?
Kingsley, I think you're making a very interesting point, because when you have industries concentrating within the developed areas like Lagos, now Abuja, Kano, you find that the economy is not really spreading. It doesn't get down to the people. But there is that problem usually created by the local people when eventually industry is established within their vicinity. The problem is actually from the federal government, because if an industry is established within a rural area, I think the federal government should at least realize that there is need to encourage that industry in the first place, at least making sure that electricity is distributed enough, getting to those type of areas. Then the roads must extend to these areas, at least to encourage the people on ground. However, the problems from the local people in terms of maybe struggling to say you must be paying us a particular money because you are within our vicinity, or the local government establishing certain different types of taxation to extract money from the industries, or even the state governments trying to also make their own money from the same industry. I mean, those are issues that actually discourage people having the industries within those rural areas. We all know that if these industries are giving good, healthy accommodation and environment, is to the benefit of the community. But there is one issue I want to mention, as it also has to do with having industries outside key parts of Nigeria, especially Lagos. I remember some 2-3 years back, one of our companies tried to establish this bonded warehouse, and the company was informed by custom that it's not possible to have the bonded warehouse outside Lagos, just because the customs feel they won't be able to manage the logistics of accompanying goods from ports in Lagos down to maybe rural areas where the outside Lagos or outside the key towns in Nigeria where these industries are established. What I'm trying to say is that this is highly discouraging for any industrialist who wants at least to extend the advantage of his economic growth to his people or to the rural areas. This was a very big discouragement, and the industry today is still complaining. So, in effect, industries within rural areas should be encouraged, because they are actually the people that are affecting the people right inside the villages, and then they will limit the migration of people to townships at least, and encourage the spread of the economy.
All right, Dr. Ifeanyi Okoye, I would like to appreciate you for coming on our program and joining us, of course, in this conversation. Dr. Okoye is Chief Executive CEO of Jewel Nigeria Limited. Thank you very much, and do have a pleasant day. All right, we quickly turn to Lagos now, where, of course, Dr. Oladimeji Alo is. Doctor, final question for you. I'm wondering, in our quest to go, to become import-oriented or self-sufficient, if you may, what is our membership of the WTO? Does it have any effect or impact on the manufacturing subsector here in Nigeria?
I think it does. The point really is for us to belong to a global group where standards are set and rules are set. What is important is that even when we belong to such groups, we should do so being quite mindful of our own stage of development. And so it will not be a case of wholesale importation of all of the measures that they dole out, but adapting their measures and making a case for some local variation of whatever it is done. But in terms of belonging to WTO, I think it's a good thing to do, because we are in a global village and Nigeria cannot operate as an island. Mark you that, in fact, Nigeria is highly dependent, both for inputs and several other things, on the other part of the world. So it's good for us to be a part of such a standard setting and agenda setting organization as WTO.
I was just going to say, Dr. Alo, we didn't have the benefit of hearing from you. Do you get shaken down from time to time by the states and local governments in the area of Operation Beja Pains?
Lagos State is lucky because Lagos has been a center of industry for several years. And Lagos has been lucky in the last 16 years because the governments we've had in Lagos are governments that are proactive and governments that are actually private sector oriented. They run Lagos as a private company. So they are more decent, they are more responsive. And so I must say that Lagos does not have that kind of challenge. The governments in Lagos that we've had in the last 16 years have done their best to cooperate. The only issues that they have is that rates. You know, their rates are high. For everything you do in Lagos, you pay high rate, but it's understandable because they have to provide the services that all of us need to make Lagos a state to live in.
Okay. Dr. Oladimeji, I'm luckily sorry about that. Of course, the issue again of rates and multiple taxation, I don't know when we will...
States and local government.
By states and local government, of course. Dr. Oladimeji, thank you very much indeed for your contributions this morning. You've helped to make our day. All right,
well, let's return to our two guests very briefly. Gentlemen, Alhaji Mustapha Bello, your final word before we wrap it up. Very quickly, sir.
Well, let me just comment on the two issues. The World Trade Organization and the issue of the reckless drive for revenue by states. In states where you find that kind of thing, I mean, the last speaker has just said that, oh, Lagos is good, the rates are high, but, you know, is because the governor is an investor-friendly governor. He has understood the fact that without investments, there is no way he can drive his own economy. And today, that state essentially depends on the revenue or income it makes, or it generates internally, not depending on what it gets from Abuja. And then on the World Trade Organization, this issue had come up severally, you know, since when I was minister, and I keep laughing at people. Because Nigeria was actually a founding member or a foundation member of the World Trade Organization. When we migrated from GATT, then General Agreements on Tariff and Trade, into World Trade Organization. And all the rules that are set or established in the World Trade Organization system are not rigid rules. They are flexible rules. Okay. There are rules that a country can apply that I can't implement this for this and this and this reason. I need a waiver. I need this number of years. Please come and even help me over this number of years to be able to get myself to the level that I can comply. So it's not that because you are a member, you are just surrendering your own sovereignty to all sorts of imports. At all. It is not. We need to have anti-dumping legislation to protect ourselves against such dumpings. As long as we don't have it, obviously, we will continue to expose ourselves to such imports that are injurious to our economy. So the problem actually is that of capacity, which I tried as minister then to put what we called enhanced national focal point on multilateral trade matters that brings in both the private sector and the public sector to be able to agree on such measures that need to be taken by government to protect the economy.
Our time is up. I'm sorry, Kingsley.
Well, that's right. I mean, he
saw me earlier on trying to.
No, that's right, Claire. Alhaji Mustapha Bello would like to thank you for the illuminating perspectives. In other words, WTO is not an enslavement of our economy. Thank you for your perspective this morning, and also Engineer Ahmadu Rufai Mohammed, former president of national president of NASIMA. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take a last word from you because the signals we're getting indicated. Our time is up. But again, thank you for your perspectives on the program this morning, and we wish you the very best. Okay, still on Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We are taking a short break now. When we return, we'll take our complimentary segments.
Yes, Hotel The Horizon has rebranded with upgrade of their facilities. Guests and visitors to Hotel The Horizon are certainly in for an amazing good time. Located in a very serene environment with a crop of well-trained personnel, Hotel The Horizon has tastefully and exquisitely furnished rooms and suites. Host your events at our fully air-conditioned, multi-purpose, pillar-free banquet hall. Enjoy our exclusive continental and national delicacies. Have relaxing moments at our state-of-the-art Fijat poolside bar and grill, opened 24 hours daily. Let us take the stress off you. Take advantage of our excellent outdoor catering services for all your events. Hotel The Horizon, situated at Plot 5, Candy Close, Wuse 2, Abuja.
The body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another.
What keeps you so cool, man?
Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection with added menthol to protect from germs. Cool gives you maximum protection against germs every day from head to toes and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Dettol. Be 100% sure.
Welcome back and on to sports now. FIFA President Sepp Blatter has commended Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan for his sports development programs. And here is Musbah Udan Wahab with that story and others in our sports segment.
Welcome here. Let's talk sport now. Sepp Blatter has revealed that Nigeria is a very important country in world football for always striving to qualify for all FIFA organized competitions. Blatter disclosed this to Nigeria Football Federation NFF President Amaju Pinnick during a meeting on Monday at the FIFA headquarters in Zurich, which was in line with NFF administration's vision of constantly bonding with the world body and also to seek more FIFA projects for the country. Commended the passion and drive of the new NFF body, revealing his delight with their new thinking and dynamism. The saluted outgoing Nigeria President Goodluck Jonathan for his immense contributions to the growth of Nigeria football, while tasking President-elect Muhammadu Buhari to do better. Former Super Eagles forward Obafemi Martins continued with his brilliant goal-scoring run in the Major League Soccer as he got 2 goals for Seattle Sounders in their 3-1 victory against New York City FC at Yankee Stadium. Obago put his side ahead in the 23rd minute after a rundown, a through ball, and slaughtered a breakaway goal in the 23rd minute, but gave his side a half-time lead. 9 minutes on restart of the second half, Mehdi Bellochi put the host on level times before Clint Dempsey put Seattle Sounders on the lead again 4 minutes later. The Nigerian completed his brace in the 67th minute after he won a 1-on-1 battle with goalkeeper Josh Saunders as he rolled in after Dempsey's clever backheel pass. Martins now boasts of 4 goals from 8 games for his side, that now ranks 3rd in the Western Conference with 18 points. Now to tennis, as Britain's Andy Murray has won his 4th clay court title with a 7-6, 5-7, 7-6 victory over German Philipp Kohlschreiber in the Munich Open final. It was the 32nd ATP title of the Scots career as he prepares for the French Open at the end of the month. In a rain-interrupted match, the top seed needed just over 3 hours to beat the world number 24 Kohlschreiber. He became the first Briton to win an ATP-ranked event on clay since Poster Motrem in Parma in April 1976. And that's it from the world of sports this morning. The program continues in a bit.
All right, and we move on to the foreign scene where prolonged air strikes in the Syrian cities of Idlib, Aleppo and Damascus have raised concerns among right groups monitoring the events in that country. Here is Nnamdi Odipo with all the details.
Hello and welcome. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights claims dozens of people have been killed in Syria airstrikes on the city of Idlib and Aleppo and the suburbs of Damascus. The UK-based monitoring network said at least 3 people were killed, while 16 others were injured when Syrian helicopters dropped 7 barrel bombs on a neighborhood in Idlib on Monday. The death toll is expected to rise. In Aleppo, at least 5 people, including 3 children, were reportedly killed in the airstrikes on the city of Al-Abab. Ongoing clashes in Aleppo province have left many people dead or injured, while thousands have been left homeless. Israel's President Rivon Rivlin has said the Ethiopian Israelis' protest against alleged discrimination revealed an open and raw wound at the heart of Israeli society. He said Israel must address the community's grievances, which had been ignored. This comes after police and protesters clashed in Tel Aviv over the issue of discrimination. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has met the Ethiopian Israeli soldier who was beaten by police fueled tension. He praised the soldier, Demas Depade, and said he was shocked by the video which emerged last week showing the soldier being beaten by 2 police officers in the suburb of Tel Aviv. And finally, the leader of Taiwan's ruling party and Chinese President Xi Jinping have held the highest level talks between the 2 sides in 6 years. Nationalist Chairman Eric Choi was in Beijing for the meeting, a sign of warming relations between the sides. Chinese nationalists fled to Taiwan in 1949 after a brutal civil war with the communists. China sees Taiwan as a breakaway province which will ultimately return. But many Taiwanese oppose reunification and fear that growing economic dependency on Beijing could be the first step towards the outcome. At the meeting, the Chinese president was reported to have said that China and Taiwan would settle political differences through consultations, but first, the Taiwan has to accept that it is part of China. And that's it on the foreign scene. Good morning.
Thank you very much there, Namdi Odupo. Let's now quickly take a look at the weather report for the rest of the day.
Welcome to the weather forecast from the National Weather Center, Abuja. The weather charts suggest few activities over the central states and the southern cities in the next 24 hours. And for the details, we expect the extreme northern cities to be partly cloudy and cloudiness over the central cities, with the exception of places around Nguru and Maiduguri, where they are expected to be hazy. And as we are progressing into the afternoon, we expect the conditions over the northern region not to change that much, while localized thunderstorms will be experienced over high ground areas of the central cities, places like Jos and some areas around Abuja. And also, isolated localized thunderstorms will be experienced around the coastal region and its inland. And for the maximum temperature forecast, do stand by. And that's what we have for you from the National Weather Center, Abuja. Thank you.
Joyce Ogunleye for the weather report there. And again, Abuja is 36 degrees Celsius, of course, with rains, as you've seen there. This morning, it's still raining as we speak. And we do hope that, of course, as you go out with your umbrellas, to shield you from the rain. Kingsley.
Well, that's right. It's been a good time with us. We hope you also enjoyed the program. We discussed the issues that the incoming administration should take notice of and try to work on with regard to the manufacturing subsector. My name is Kingsley Osadola. Do have a nice day, and the program returns tomorrow, 7 o'clock in the morning. Claire?
And I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. Do have a pleasant day.